Hi students. Today we're going to be talking about the sine and cosine ratios. Let's begin with a warm-up from yesterday. In number 1, it says to find x. So remembering that we learned about the tangent function yesterday, we'll go ahead and show our work by writing tan of 53 degrees equals, remember the TOA. So the tangent is opposite over adjacent. So I can write opposite is x and adjacent is 3, so I can use that fraction. Now I'm putting a 1 on the bottom here, and now cross multiply. So x times 1 is x. Tan 53 times 3 would just be 3 times the tangent of 53. Now take out your calculator. You can check your work. You should end up getting, so we type in 3 times the tangent of 53, and I got 3.98. So that means that this side length right here, where the x is 3.93, almost 4. Okay, looking at number 2, this time it says to find x, and I can tell that x is an angle measure. So the tangent of x equals, so opposite is 7, adjacent is 5. So remember yesterday, anytime we need to find the angle measure, we're using the inverse function. So we need to click second on the calculator and find the inverse function for tangent. So I'm showing my work by writing it here, so I click second tan, and then I type in the ratio 7 divided by 5, and that gives me 54.46 degrees. So notice the difference between problem 1. In problem 1, we got a side length. In problem 2, we got an angle measure. Now let's talk about sine and cosine. So sine is the SO part of SOHCAHTOA, and that would be sine is opposite over hypotenuse, as you can see here. And the cosine, SOHCAHTOA, so the CA is adjacent over hypotenuse. Just like we did for tangent, we're going to apply this to a few problems. So looking at problem 1, this just says to write the ratios. So I'm just going to leave it as a fraction, and I don't actually need to solve anything. So for the sine of A, before we start, let's write this up here, SOHCAHTOA, just so we remember what our ratios are. So for the sine, I need to write opposite over hypotenuse. Looking just at A, so opposite would be 9, and hypotenuse is 15. Always reduce to lowest term, so let's just divide both of these by 3. So 9 divided by 3 is 3, and 15 divided by 3 is 5. So our final answer would be sine of A equals 3 over 5. Now cosine of B. So looking at the CA, this part right here, I need adjacent over hypotenuse. So now just focusing on angle B. So I'm focusing my attention right here. Adjacent is 9, and hypotenuse is 15. So notice that the sine of A and the cosine of B actually end up being the same ratios here. Okay, let's move on to number 2 and solve for the side length of x. So at this point, we can use sine, cosine, or tangent depending on what they give us. So we know that we definitely have 50 degrees. We need to figure out if we want to write sine, cosine, or tangent here. So when we concentrate on the 50, the 10 is opposite. So let me label this as opposite. The x is hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is always opposite of the right angle here. So looking for opposite in a hypotenuse, it looks like sine would be the only fit for this. So I'm writing the sine of 50 equals, opposite is 10, hypotenuse is x. Go ahead and turn this into a fraction by putting 1 on the bottom. Now cross multiply. So we get x times the sine of 50 equals 10. To get x by itself, divide by the sine of 50. So that cancels out, and we get x equals 10 divided by the sine of 50. So typing that into your calculator, you should end up getting 13.05. And again, keep in mind 13.05, this is the length of the hypotenuse. Okay, now let's look at number 3. So number 3 asks us to find x. So again, we're looking for the side length of x. So we're given 22 degrees, so I can definitely write 22 degrees down. I need to figure out what to put in this blank spot, sine, cosine, or tan. So when I focus on 22, the x is right next to it. So that means we're given the adjacent side, and 8 is hypotenuse. So when I look at SOHCAHTOA, the cosine, is the only one that has adjacent and the hypotenuse, so I need to use that trig function. So I can write it cosine 22 equals x over 8. Turning this into a fraction, we can just multiply. So we get x times 1 is x, and 8 times the cosine of 22. We're cross-multiplying. Finally simplify using your calculator. So I'm going to type in 8 times cosine 22. And I got 7.42, rounding to the nearest hundredth. So again, this is the side length for x. Alright, let's do one more example. So this one, example 4, says to find x. And when I look at x, I need to find the measure of that angle. So writing this out, I can write x degrees, and I need to figure out what goes in the blank spot, sine, cosine, or tan. So it all depends on what you're given in the drawing here. So it looks like if I focus on x, 1 is adjacent to it, and 2 is the hypotenuse. So thinking about SOHCAHTOA, adjacent and hypotenuse are part of the cosine function. So that means I need to write cosine of x degrees equals 1 over 2. So remember, anytime we're looking for an angle measurement, we need to use the inverse function. So we can write cosine inverse of 1/2. So typing this into your calculator, you click second, which is in the top left corner, and then cosine of 1 divided by 2, and I got 60 degrees. That means that x right here has to be 60 degrees. Okay, try these 3 problems, and I'll see you in class tomorrow.